I've come all the way from Phoenix, Arizona to be here tonight, and I'm dedicating my talk to the founders, as well as to Dr. Ron McCauley, who you've already heard about. He was one of the original faculty members. I'll tell you more about him in a couple of minutes. Now you know that it was Dr. Auburn who chose me as your speaker. Apparently he was reading the McMaster Times, it's the alumni magazine, back in May. And there was an article called The Butterfly Effect, and it was about my story. And I think halfway through the article he realized, oh my goodness, that's Bobbi, that's Bob. That was my intern when I was the chief resident, and he was right. It piqued his curiosity. And so he did what Dr. Auburn does best, he did some research. I think he looked me up on Wikipedia or Google or YouTube. I think he might have done a background check too. Did you check my credit score?
Yes, I did. Very good.
All right. In any event, he had his staff arrange a meeting. And I met him at the ivory tower in his office. And we caught up. We hadn't talked with each other for 35, 6, 7 years. We had a great meeting, and then he surprised me towards the end of the meeting by saying, you know, I'd like you to be our speaker at the Founders Dinner. I said yes right away. But that was it. He didn't give me any kind of, well, this is going to be the theme, or here are your talking points. All he did is he just said, you know, I have this feeling that you're going to know exactly what to say to these students tonight. And that was it. We haven't talked since. So I think the most nervous person in the room tonight is probably Dr. Auburn. He's never heard me speak before. Now, Dr. Auburn is not the only one that can do some research. I wanted to find out more about the class. So I called the undergrad office, and they sent me over 300 photographs of all of you. And I've looked at every one of them over and over. No names, just your faces. I feel like I know you. Here's just a few of those photographs. I was shocked at how large the class is now. You're more than 3 times the size of my medical school class. I was also surprised at how young you are. I think the thing that most pleased me was how diverse you are. You look like the very community you're going to be serving pretty soon. Here's a couple of other photographs. And I detected that there are, I was going to call you troublemakers. Maybe characters is a better name to use. But there's some characters in this class, and I just chose 3 of them. I knew it. I was right. I knew it. Now, my research wasn't done. I wanted to find out something about Dr. Auburn. In fact, I wanted to answer the question, why was he chosen as dean? Now, I know personally the kind of educator he was, and I know all the awards, and I know the 400 papers he's written, and the 100 chapters in textbooks, and the 12 books he's edited. But still, that's stiff competition to become a dean. So, I found somebody who had sat on the search committee, and I sat down with her for coffee. And I said, was there a moment when you knew you'd found your new dean? Oh, of course there was, she said. We found an old photograph of Dr. Auburn. Here it is. Now, I know it's kind of grainy, but I know this is news to you. It's grainy, but they took a very careful look at this photograph, and here's what they started to notice. Look at those adorable... The mustache, you know, Tom Selleck, Magnum PI, 1978. But they couldn't help but look a little lower. That was the moment that they knew they had found what they were always looking for the medical school. They'd found the sexy dean. Dr. Auburn, are we still friends?
Nobody's ever called me sexy before.
Now look, if anybody wants to fact check this story, I made it all up. That's right, I made it all up. In fact, in the United States, we call this fake news. Now look, I haven't come this far to horse around. I'm not a comedian. I've got some pretty important things I just want to talk to you about. The first thing I'm going to do is present some of my story. Not because I've got such a great story, but it's going to be relevant to my message and my challenge and my warning to you. So here we go. I thought I'd start at about the same age as you are now. And I think it's best to just get this secret out right now. It's very personal. I'm going to put it right on the table. Not a lot of people know about this. But in 1972, I was just finishing my undergraduate biology degree. And I had been awarded an honor M. That's for academic excellence. And I just captained the men's varsity golf team to our second OUAA championship. So I was pretty hot stuff. And I applied for the medical school and was accepted. That's 1972. I graduated in 1978. Now you can do the math. It took me 6 years to get through this 3-year program. As they say, I had some issues. I floundered. In fact, I thought of renaming tonight's dinner the Flounder's Dinner. I tried to find some other people to join this list. They're too embarrassed. They're not going to step forward. But in any event, I was part of the class of 75, and I spent time with 76 and 77, and I really did graduate in 78. There I am. Now, I was not, as far as I know, on the short list or even the long list to become a Rhodes Scholar. But I want to introduce you to a Rhodes Scholar. His name was Dr. John Evans. And I've met him. I've listened to him speak. I've talked with him. He was amazing. He was smart. He was athletic. He was determined. He was humble too. There was some point when he was in his late 20s or 30s where he had all these unbelievable ideas how medical education could be improved upon. But you know, I've met hundreds of people over the years with lots of big ideas about stuff, and you know what they do with all those big ideas? Nothing. But he, for whatever reason, he took it upon himself. He's going to do something with all of these ideas. I call it, he must have had a John Evans moment. That's what I call it. Here were some of his ideas. And I mentioned the John Evans moment. So he took these ideas and he trotted them out to the University of Toronto in his early 30s, and he was rejected. And then when he was 34 or 5, he applied to become the dean of this medical school, the first dean. And Dr. Harry Thode hired him. And he surrounded himself with some of the most amazing faculty. And, as they say, the rest is history. He turned medical education on its head, not just here at McMaster, but all over the world. It's unbelievable. So there he is again. I'll have more to say about him in a few minutes. But I've already introduced the whole mess of I floundered and I had some issues. And I think that it's best to tell you about that. And the best place to start is where everything starts. I was born in 1950, Chatham, Ontario. I'm the oldest of 4 kids. And when I was a little boy, I did all the usual things a little boy does. I collected bugs, I studied them. I played all the sports, I excelled at golf. I studied the piano. I served Mass as an altar boy. I did all kinds of stuff. And it seemed like, there I am again. That's me winning my first golf tournament, the little one in the middle. And there was a point where it didn't seem to make any difference what I tried. And I'm being humble here, but I excelled at it. I just did. I felt like I didn't know what I was going to be. Maybe a professional golfer, the best in the world. Maybe I'd be a concert pianist. Maybe I'd be somebody who cares for people, like a priest or a doctor. I didn't know what it would be, but the sky was the limit for me. Except there was one thing different about me. When I was 5 years old, 6 years old, I used to like to dress in girls' clothes. And I knew in my heart that I was a girl. My name was Bobbi. Now, I kept this to myself because I knew I was different. And I saw how people treated others that were different. And I didn't want to expose myself to the bullying, to the teasing, or worse. So I kept it to myself until I couldn't keep it to myself anymore. I finally had to talk to somebody. And I chose our parish priest. And I chose the confessional because it was dark and safe. So I went on a Saturday morning and knelt down and told him my sins. I think I made them up because that wasn't my point of being there. I had to talk to him about this part of me. So after I got done, it's all dark in there. I could hear him breathing. I could hear him shifting positions. And then he told me, my son, these thoughts about being a girl and this cross-dressing, they're wrong. They're bad. In fact, they're sinful. So you've got to stop this stuff. And I'm going to give you a big penance. Go in peace. I wobbled out of that damn confessional. I got on my bike. I pedaled home. I cried the whole way home. I was 14 years old. And the damnedest thing is that over the next many, many months, I just kept sinning over and over and over because I couldn't stop thinking about being Bobbi or cross-dressing. So I was doomed. And from that time on, the sky was no longer the limit for me anymore. And this is the baggage I brought into my medical education. That's who I was when I entered in 1972. I seemed to do okay the first couple of years. But in my clerkship year, the pressure ramps up, the responsibilities ramp up, and something happened to me. I think we could call it a crisis in confidence. I think maybe I was depressed. Of course, I didn't talk to anybody. I talked to a person, as you know, a few years before, but I wasn't talking to anybody about this stuff. What I did is I just quit medical school. I just wrote a letter to Dr. Fraser Mustard, he was the dean at the time, told him I wanted to pursue another career, and that was that. Now, my parents were like dumbfounded. Everybody was like, what in the world is going on here? And I told everybody I want to pursue the golf business. 3 or 4 days later, I got a call from a Dr. Ron McCauley. You've already heard, he was an incredible family physician. I think he started the first family practice teaching unit. He'd been my mentor through my first couple of years. And he'd also was the lead in one of my tutorial groups. He called me up, he wanted to see me in his office. It wasn't Dr. Mustard, it was Dr. McCauley. So I sat down with him. He had my letter in his hand, my letter resigning from the program. He told me, I'm not going to let you do this. Nope, not going to let you do it. And he just tore it up right in front of me. He says, what we're going to do instead, Bob, is we're going to create a leave of absence for you. You go out there and do whatever it is you've got to do. Let's keep in touch. And then let's get you back in the program. And he looked at me right square in the face and he says, you're going to be one of the most incredible doctors I've ever met. So let's keep in touch. 3 or 4 months later, he called me. How you doing, Bob? Well, I'm working at Choo Civic Golf Course. I'm playing in some golf tournaments. You ready to come back? No, Dr. McCauley, I told you I'm pursuing the golf business. Well, all right then, let's stay in touch. And 4 or 5 months later, he called me again. What are you up to, Bob? Well, it's in the middle of winter. I'm driving cab. I'm selling men's clothes downtown Hamilton. You ready to come back? No, Dr. McCauley. Nope, I'm looking forward to next season. Okay then, let's stay in touch. And I didn't stay in touch. And I kept driving that damn cab. And I was totally lost. I was lost. I felt like such a failure and a disappointment. And every damn day I kept thinking, oh my gosh, I just wanted to help people. That's how this all started. I just want to help people. And somewhere about just a little over 2 years out of the program, I called up Dr. McCauley. And I said, I'm ready. I want to come back. He was thrilled. He was over the moon. And then he said, Bob, your leave of absence expired a year ago. You can't come in. You can't come back. You're going to have to start all over again with the other 4,000 applicants looking for 65 spots. Oh my God, what have I done? I don't think we talked for 30 seconds. It was just, I didn't know what to say. And then he said, look, I'll get back to you in a couple of days. And he did. And when he called me, he said, Bob, I got you back in. I have no idea whose arm he had to twist, who he had to lobby, but he got me back into the program. And when I went back in, I was hell-bent for leather that I was going to do really well. I was not going to disappoint myself or my future patients, or especially not Dr. McCauley. And I went on, I'm forgetting about these slides here, but there he is. And I wanted, knowing I was coming tonight, 2 months ago, I wanted to find Dr. McCauley. And I wanted to thank him in front of all of you, because he saved my professional career. And inadvertently, he has helped tens of thousands of patients over the year. They all got my kind of unique care, and it never would have happened without Dr. McCauley. So I found out that he passed away. So there was no thanking Dr. McCauley. Then I started to look for his family. And I didn't know whether they were around, but I found his wife, Joan, and one thing led to another. And here they are, Joan, and his daughter Beth, his son Jim and Janet. They're all here. And I hope you've enjoyed this story, and maybe you learned something about your dad or your husband. I don't know how to thank him. I can't find him. But maybe one of you can. And tell your grandkids about him. So that's my thank you. Now, once I got going. I was a busy family doc. I raised 3 kids. I did all kinds of obstetrics. I volunteered in the community. I sat in far too many hospital committees. And I just worked and worked and worked. And that went on until I was in my mid-50s. Here I am, playing golf. I had buddies. Those are my drinking buddies. And through it all, I'm sure if you'd have asked anybody about Dr. Bob Lancaster, then they would have said, oh my gosh, what a success case. Pillar of the community, etc. I was so miserable inside. If you gave me 3 or 4 minutes alone, I'd just start crying. And this happened over and over because I just kept thinking of Bobby. And I didn't see any way where I would ever be able to just live my life like I knew I was. I was just trapped. And so, somewhere in my mid-50s, I started to have one of those medical school kind of breakdowns again. Except this time it was way worse. I didn't break down. Like, I blew apart into 100 pieces. My wife, Lucy, she rescued me from a near suicide. And then it took my family, it took my friends, it took psychiatrists, psychologists, counselors, pills. It took all the king's horses and all the king's men to put this Humpty Dumpty back together again. And then I got the first counseling of my life. Something had to give. I had to finally get things right. And this is who finally emerged in 2012. What you're looking at there, that's what a true and authentic person looks like. And there was one more task for me to do at that point. I was a fancy medical director of an enormous hospice company. I had to sit down with my employer and have a chat about the changes they were about to see that were going on. And they love my work, and I love my work. And I got let go. We horsed around for 2 or 3 months, but they just did not want to see me be the face of their business anymore. So I was now unemployed and 62 years old. And I did just about what any other person would do. I went golfing. I went golfing. Look at my McMaster hat. I found out that I could really still play. And I applied to the United States Golf Association to start to compete as a woman. And I started to win tournaments. And then I decided to turn pro at 62, 3 years of age, because I was fulfilling a childhood dream. I'm going to be a professional golfer. And I started to play in the Cactus Tour. And I was competing against young 21, 20-year-olds. They were 40, 45 years younger than me. They were from all over the world. We're all trying, me too, we're all trying to get in the LPGA Tour. I was working hard at my game. And I remember after my 3rd or 4th Cactus Tour tournament, I got a call from Mike Brown. He's in that cart with me over there. Got a call from at home. And he said, "Bobby, you've got a problem. The Arizona Republic wants to talk with you. They've gotten an email from some spectator, and the spectator, I guess, is complaining that there's a queer playing on the Cactus Tour, and this is not right, it shouldn't be allowed, and they want the paper to investigate." So the reporter was after me, and I didn't know what to do. I talked to my family, and they said, "Don't you dare touch it. You're a family doc. You've never dealt with the media. They're going to sensationalize this. They're going to chew you up and spit you out. Don't touch it." So I talked with Lucy, and she just said, "You do whatever you think is right." So I thought about it, and I thought, you know something? The transgender community is really suffering. I know a lot about that, and I've got some ideas about what some of the solutions could be. And maybe this is my opportunity to present myself to the golfing public, to the sports world as a transgender woman, so they get kind of comfortable around somebody who's transgender. Then I can do my educational piece. I had it all planned out. So I called up the reporter and I accepted the interview. And we had NBC Sports at our house the next night, or the next day, film crews and then the print media, and it was nuts. We were on the news, Lucy and me, that evening. Then we were in the Sunday paper, the Arizona Republic, the following Sunday, front page, big 2 or 3 page article on my life. And that's how it started. The next thing you know, it's USA Today, it's Good Morning America, it's Huffington Post, it's all the Canadian newspapers, interview after interview. And every time I accepted, because I knew I'm just reaching a different audience, I'm reaching a different demographic. I'm going to change hearts and minds. And then there were films and documentaries, and it just went on and on. So that was my John Evans moment. I finally decided to be a change maker too. I stepped forward, and it was scary, but I'm happy I did. Here I am talking and talking and talking. Universities, I've been to Stanford and University of Kansas and Arizona State and conventions and community colleges. And I have lobbied in Washington. I was noticed by the Human Rights Campaign. They gave me a big award. I could care less about the award, but it gave me a little bigger status so that I could just reach more people with my messaging. The award was nice, but then they elected me to their national board of directors. So I spend a lot of time in Washington at meetings, but also lobbying. You want a tough assignment? Go to Capitol Hill, meet with your senators or your representatives, and talk to them about transgender rights. Now there's an assignment. You want to run right into this wall? So that's what I've been up to. Am I making any difference at all? Well, I know I am, because I've got a box full, and I'm not exaggerating, of correspondence from people that I'll never meet. But they write to me the most touching letters. about the fact that they heard me speak, they read an article, they saw some film, and it changed everything for them or their family. Now they get it. And so that just keeps me energized. I just keep doing what I'm doing. So I think you've got enough information about me. And now I think we can get into my kind of grand finale, this messaging I talked about. What was that, an hour or two ago? My message. You know, once upon a time, I was your age, and I had big dreams about the kind of doctor I was going to be. And I knew I was entering a very challenging, a very stressful career. But here's what I brought to the table. And so did all my classmates. And I bet you this slide here describes each and every one of you. I think the only group of health professionals I admire more than doctors are nurses. And I mean that. I especially mean it because I'm married to a nurse practitioner. And this is going to give me brownie points at home later on. But as time goes on, there's a flip side to this, you know. Here's the flip side. I'm the poster child for this slide, especially the part about difficulty asking for help. So busy learning how to care for others and never learning how to care about myself. Now, you know, pay attention here, because you're no different than I was. If you don't attend to this, then here's what can happen, not to all of you, but sadly to too many of you. I've seen it happen. Here's where you end up. You start at slide 1 and 20, 30 years later, you're here. Now I understand the program. I was talking to Dr. Auburn and Dr. Bell that your program is starting to offer some lectures, some in-servicing, whatever, on self-help, on life-work balance, on topics like that. If you'd have come to me 40 years ago and said, oh, we've got a lecture on self-help, you've just got to go, I'd have looked at you and I would have laughed. I would have told you, just get out of here. I've got more important things to study than worrying about life-work balance. I'm just asking you, don't blow that off. It's going to be really, really important to keep you healthy and functioning, not just as a doctor, but as a human being for a long, long time. I don't feel like a golfer right now. Sometimes things can get really out of hand. It's rare, but when it does, it's just devastating. I know all of you know Robert Choo's story, I'm sure. I'm not going to tell it again. But I found out about it maybe 2 months ago. And I know it was upsetting to you. It just really hit me hard. I can't stop thinking about him. I think maybe it's because we shared the same first name. But I think it's knowing that I could have easily been Robert Choo. If it wasn't for Dr. McCauley at just that right moment, or Lucy at just that right moment, I would have some bench somewhere dedicated to me in the Health Sciences Library. So I am just so sad and so sorry that Robert's not here tonight. Having said that, and listen to this, if you are ever, and I'm talking to the class here, if you're ever in this kind of situation, there's no time to sign up for a self-help class. This is an emergency. You know what we tell people when they're on fire? We tell them to drop, stop, drop, and roll. Well, if you're ever emotionally on fire, I want you to stop, drop, and talk. Drop your ego, drop your pride, drop your defenses. Talk to somebody. I don't care who it is. Talk to a classmate, talk to a colleague, talk to one of your professors, a family member. And because I feel like I'm one of your classmates now, we had our picture taken earlier together. If you at that moment, if any one of you ever has a moment like that where you haven't got a clue who you can call, then guess what? You're going to call me. And at the end of this talk, I'm going to give you my contact information. It's the least I can do given what Dr. McCauley did for me. So, now it's my challenge. I don't want you to look at this next slide. And I don't want you to look at this one either. You know where I'm going with this, don't you? There's Dr. Evans again. Remember the moment he must have had when he wanted to become an agent of change? Remember the moment I had when I knew I'm stepping forward? I wish that each and every one of you are going to have one of those moments, a John Evans moment. I don't know what it is. You've already come close. How many times have you seen an issue or heard about an issue? And I'm not just talking about medical issues, but how many times have you seen something going on that I know a lot about that. I've got strong opinions about that. I've got some solutions about that. And what do? You look the other way, pretend you didn't see it. You excuse yourself, you're too busy. I'm hoping one of these times you're going to step forward and have your moment. And I know it's going to feel a little scary. And if you're going to hold back because you feel like, gosh, only Dr. Evans can do things like this. I'm not that smart. Well, for gosh sakes. No, maybe you'll never be that smart, but you're at least as smart as me because I'm one of the most average people you're ever going to meet. And I've been changing things. So I hope you have your moment. But it's maybe a lot easier to do it as a class. So here's my proposal tonight. I'm challenging this class, and I want to come back to your graduation. I'm going to be so proud of you. The class of 2019. But I want something more for you than that. I want you to be the best class ever. Okay, the best class ever. And how are you going to do that? There's so many of you, and you've got a perfectly great leader in Elise, wherever you're sitting. Hello, Elise. This would be so easy. You know, many hands make light work. You could get organized. I know you're busy with your studies and all this, and why don't you call up Habitat for Humanity? Go build a house one weekend with them. Why don't you go march as a class in a pride parade somewhere as a bunch of allies? Get a bunch of t-shirts. Maybe you could contact some organization that helps immigrant or refugee families. Take 1 or 2 families on, see what you can do for a year. That's what I'm hoping you can do. I mean, the number of things you could do that wouldn't take that much effort are unbelievable. And you could end up being the best class ever. And I'm telling you, you would change things. Because the class after you, guess what they'd be noticing? They're going to try to they're going to outdo you. They're going to be the best class ever too. And the class after them, you could start some legacy here that would be so important. So, you get it? Now here's my warning. This is going to be very brief because I've probably gone over time. Be very careful of what you post on social media. And be very careful of the sort of photographs you release for public consumption, because you never know when one of them may come back to haunt you. All right, here's my contact information. And I guess this is time to say goodbye. But I hope that you're going to invite me to your grad. And I hope that I've helped even just one person here tonight. You've been a great audience. Thank you.